Hello everybody. Today I am going to be reviewing Jaws. This is the 1975 classic that was directed by Steven Spielberg. Spielberg was part of that film school movie brat, as they call it, that generation of filmmakers that sort of contributed to this new Hollywood in the late 60s and in the 70s, and they sort of redefined filmmaking for a new generation. These were guys who grew up watching a lot of those classic golden age of Hollywood movies that came out in like the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and they took a lot of those themes of classicism and incorporated kind of a more modern take on it, and sometimes including more experimental elements in the films. You saw that in the works of like Coppola, De Palma, Scorsese. What Spielberg redefined at that time, as most of us know, is what popcorn entertainment was, what it could be. His strength really lies in his ability to make movies that are nostalgic but also dramatic and very well done. He's really good at taking something that has a very action-adventure, rousing feel to it, the kind of things that we liked as a kid. And he's definitely taking influence from Flash Gordon and those kind of serial cartoons, kind of like George Lucas did also in the 70s. And he's reinvigorating it. And Jaws was an extremely important film for him, but it was also an extremely important film just in terms of what it meant for movies, because it really did begin the whole summer blockbuster and popcorn movie trend. I think Star Wars is the one that really did contribute to what we now know as the blockbuster summer movie season, but I would say that Jaws was more kind of like the gateway drug into it. What is ironic about Jaws is that watching it now, I mean, it does have those elements of horror and action adventure, but it's a very kind of minimalistic film. It's much more focused on the characters. It's more of a dramatic work compared to a lot of the big kind of corporate soulless blockbusters we see now, where it's just like CGI vomit all over the place. This is a movie that cares a lot about the personalities of the characters, and it really takes time to build the story. I love this movie. It's very nostalgic for me, as it is for many people, but I also genuinely think that it is a really great movie. I mean, it's not necessarily deep, very insightful or anything like that, but it's just well done for what it is. I think one of the best of its type. It's well written, it's well directed. I've seen it a billion times and I still watch it with that same enthusiasm that I had as a child, and that really is where Spielberg's talent lies for me. Watching it this last time, the key thing that struck me overall is just how simple it is. It's really kind of stripped down to its most simplistic story elements, and it really focuses on making them well-rounded, using kind of your basic film techniques, really fleshing out everything, and it's not needlessly complicated. A lot of the most memorable scenes, particularly the shark attack sequences, they work because they are very simple. They build the terror very, very slowly. And that was not intentional originally, but I think this is one of those movies that benefited from being accidental. The reason why you don't see the shark until maybe the fourth attack is because they had this big mechanical shark that they were using and they could not get it to work. They had all kinds of production issues, but that mechanical shark was just a huge pain in the ass. So because of that, Spielberg had to be creative. He had to really rely on a lot of those film techniques that he knew, and it gave him the opportunity to really revel in a lot of that. He got to really build the intensity beautifully. He's got the camera underwater, acting as the shark's point of view, and it's going up and up and up as you see the feet dangling, and then you've got that wonderful John Williams score that just crescendos and crescendos. You've got scenes at the beach where you've got the quick cuts of the kids playing and splashing in the water. And then Spielberg, he likes to tease you. He really likes to tease you in this movie. At times he's keeping the camera very distant, as though you're kind of gazing at all of these people. And then other times he keeps the camera at water level to give it that sense of that the people are not alone, that they're being watched. It's really effective. I mean, I saw this movie, or I tried to watch this movie the first time when I was about 9 years old, and by the third shark attack, I was out of there. I just left. I was scared out of my mind. I couldn't even go in a pool for about a week after that. And again, that's the third shark attack. You don't even see the shark at that point. So the fact that it really affected me on that level, and you're not even seeing the monster, in a sense, that's a real testament to Steven Spielberg. He knew, as Hitchcock once said, that the real power is in the anticipation of the bomb going off, not when it actually goes off. And this could have so easily been a ridiculous concept. It could have been like one of those cheap B movies that came out in the 50s, like Creature from the Black Lagoon or something like that. But it works because, this particular movie works because it feels very grounded in reality. It builds like any great dramatic thriller or horror movie should. We also build empathy for these characters because they are interesting and they're relatable. And I love the little genuine moments in the movie. Like, for instance, after Chief Brody, the protagonist, the main character, he goes through something really difficult. You know, he knew that there was a shark out in the waters and he didn't do anything about it. And one of the kids dies in a shark attack. And obviously he feels very defeated and upset. And he's sitting at home and his little boy is sitting there and just mimicking every move he does. And it's so sweet. It's something that the character needed in that moment and something that we needed because we really feel for this character. And not many big Hollywood blockbusters have the balls to just celebrate more of the quiet moments like that, the subtlety. My favorite scene is actually in the second half of the film where you have Chief Brody and then the Matt Hooper character played by Richard Dreyfuss, and then you've got Quint played by Robert Shaw, and they're on the boat hunting the shark and they get really drunk one night and they're sharing all kinds of stories, they're comparing scars, and Quint gives this wonderful monologue about a time in his past where he experienced a shark attack. And the way he tells it, it's this very compelling, very disturbing monologue, and the way that he holds your attention, it's one of the most eerie moments in the entire film for me. The film has kind of a wider scope at the beginning, but it starts to focus in on those three characters towards the end, because pretty much in the second half of the movie, there aren't any other characters but those three that are just at sea. And I think that they really play off each other really well, because you obviously have Chief Brody, who's more the straight man, the protagonist, and then you've got Matt Hooper. He's basically the hipster before there were hipsters. He's kind of the rich, young, educated shark expert. And then on the flip side, you've got Quint, who's basically the pirate of the group. He's slightly mad, he's experienced, that kind of weird old fisherman. And they're all setting out for an adventure at sea. And for me, it's the second half of the movie that really resonates with me, even more so than the first half. And I really like the first half too. The first half is more like a horror movie in terms of the way that it's built. It's also very political. You've got the mayor kind of representing the ignorance of the establishment, a guy who's much more interested in the profit rather than being concerned for the well-being of the people in the ocean. And it's, you know, a cliche part, but you'd think that an antagonist like that would carry throughout the film. Like they would find a way to tie his character into the end of the film. And they don't. None of the supporting cast really does have that real conclusive ending that you'd think they have, but they don't need to be there. That's not the point of the film. So I think that had they made it more well-rounded, where they introduce a lot of those characters in the end of the film that were there in the first half, I think it would have been a little bit gratuitous. The point here is that Chief Brody needs to conquer his big fear. You need to have something at stake as your main character. And his is that he is very afraid of the water. And he's afraid of this new place that he lives in compared to where he used to live in the big city. And so he needs to take that final step. He needs to be on this journey, this kind of self-exploration sort of journey. So he's away from his wife and kids, and he's with these two people that he likes, but he's also sort of afraid of. He doesn't know if he can trust them. And that is just, to me, essential to his character's growth. Some people would argue that his character is maybe underdeveloped and not as interesting as some of the others. And I mean, I can see that, but I actually think that his character works because he balances out the other two characters, because he is more of the straight man, the relatable guy that he's very noble. He's a family man. He obviously cares very much about his wife and his children. And he works hard. He's a person that just wants all of the citizens of the town to be happy, and he wants to sort of escape that kind of darker, more aggressive world that he grew up in. And plus you've got Quint and Hooper, who are they're very strong and very different personalities that don't always mesh very well. And I see Brody as kind of that middle ground. And that is what makes the final act so compelling. Not necessarily the shark, but just those three together building those relationships. And it's just a rousing adventure that's exciting and frightening and emotional. This is probably one of the only shark movies ever that was made in Hollywood, at least that I can think of, that isn't completely ridiculous. This is a movie that knows what it wants to be. It wants to be smarter than those movies, and it really commits to it. You have to admire that, and I really do admire what Spielberg did here. I think that this type of movie is his wheelhouse. These kinds of movies, this, Indiana Jones, E.T., that is what I feel he does best. Even though he has attempted more dramatic works later on in his career, Jaws for me is one of his better films. It is a timeless classic, it is a summer movie, and that's why I decided to review it. So you should revisit it, or if you've never seen it, definitely check it out. It's a good time. And that's my review. Thank you all for listening. All my social media is below. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.